youth leadership club founded by 6 8th graders who originally met in 2014 as a Destination Imagination team. We officially established our club in the fall of 2019 with developing leadership skills and giving back to our community boiling in our minds.
Our very first event was an open house for incoming team managers in Destination Imagination. There were over 20 attendees, including the Bay Area Region Director, Sharon Kovalevsky.
Our second large event was a Halloween-themed instant challenge party for Destination Imagination teams from around the Tri-Valley. Over 50 people came and we raised over $200 in donations.
The third event that changed our community the most was advocating for the ban of e-cigarettes in the Tri-Valley. We saw that in Livermore, they had already banned the use of e-cigarettes, but soon realized that the people from Livermore would start flooding to California, to Pleasanton and Dublin to buy e-cigarettes, which is why our club members decided to take action and attend city council meetings in both Pleasanton and Dublin, which resulted in the ban of e-cigarettes in both cities.
Our fourth and largest event, by a long shot, is our Face Shield project. We donated over 3,000 face shields all over the Bay Area and beyond to places such as Guatemala. Using GoFundMe, we were able to raise over $2,000 to send face shields to numerous hospitals everywhere. Doctors and nurses on the front line immediately put them to use.
Now we would like to welcome our guest speakers for the night: Tinny, Christy, Joshua, Rajuda, Mahika, and Oliver. Every one of our guest speakers tonight is a graduating senior at Dublin High School, except for Oliver, who is a rising senior at Castro Valley High School.
First up, talking about growth mindset, is Oliver. Oliver, with a lifelong passion for finance and service on his mind, founded the Financial Literacy Initiative in 2016 with the mission of addressing one of society's greatest and most neglected problems, financial illiteracy. Oliver, is there anything you want the audience to know about you before we start?
No, I'll share a few slides, but thank you for the great introduction.
Okay, that's cool. I'll stop screen sharing now so you can do it.
Great. Great. Can you guys all see it? All right, so thank you for having me. Thank you, Breaking Barriers. This is really a great event. I'm excited to be here. And today my focus is really talking about the mindset aspect. Because as you explore your high school career, exploring these non-academic extracurricular events, one of the big keys is that how you approach things. When we look at the different ways, all of us are going to be different. I'm sure Breaking Barriers, when they started, they had a very different, they had all sorts of various ideas about coming together, doing these great things. And my goal is really today not to give a checklist, but really to sort of use my experiences, like my introduction said, is about using my experiences and ideas to sort of show some of the skills that you can apply to your own situation. Before I keep going, I'm just on a brief background. I don't want to elaborate too much. As was mentioned earlier, I'm very interested in finance, and that's one of the reasons I founded FLI. That's how I'll be referring to it later on in the presentation. And we spread financial literacy. Well, so far we have affected thousands of people, not just in California, Toronto as well, various states, and we already have 12 moving on 13 chapters in different schools around the country, and with a series of powerful initiatives, as you can see on the slide here. And some of the other experiences I'll really be going off of today are listed here as well, working with my superintendent, not just on finance, but on social justice issues, fighting, for example, as we see today, the systemic racism. And that's something we've really addressed, I've really helped address in my community. For example, using books, making sure our English curriculum is really inclusive of everyone. Restorative justice policies. I really like what you mentioned about the e-cigarettes earlier. That's something we've taken really a lot of action on. Vaping in my community is something I've been very involved in, as well as working in DECA. If any of you guys are interested in finance, I'm definitely willing to talk more about that. But also Sunshine America. This is another organization that I founded, more focused on the environment aspect along with finance. But now that I got the introduction sort of out of the way a little bit, I just wanted to make really two quick questions, two quick and simple, but really essential questions that I just want each of you, each of our over 100 participants to really think about. And You might be wondering, why am I asking you this? And the key here is when you look at some of your extracurricular events, these are the two big words that really have to come in mind. What do you want to do, and why do you want to do it? And when you look at this, the big key you have to remember is that you will face challenges, and you will face your highs and your lows throughout your experiences. And that's why these two questions are so important. They really help you find something that you love, as something you're not just interested in, but something you're really, really passionate about, something you're willing to spend hours upon hours and work through challenges in order to become
Wait, it's
yeah. Maybe if you could mute everyone. But moving on from these two questions, I sort of wanted to talk about this sort of diagram. And I don't want to spend too much time with it because it is a whole nother conversation. But when you look at your mindset, looking about what you want to do, all of these things come together, whether it be career, your dream, and what you really want to do. What's your purpose in the world? And for me, that was really finance. Something I wanted to do in my career and dream was the finance aspect. I like numbers, I like money, maybe you guys do too, but these are some of the things that really drove me. I knew I was passionate about. And that's what led me to create my organization, FLI. Because it's one way I could use my strengths to create a change. And that's something I've been doing, creating financial education resources, spreading financial literacy, helping people on their taxes. So you have those gears that all go around in your head and really impact how you want to think. But then you have on the side these aspects as well. And that's why I put it in the speech bubble. Your parents, for example, and your peers are a big thing. And as we move on to my next couple of slides, which will dive more into the mentality aspect, is that I really want you to keep in mind, not to be discouraged or too much swayed by some of the other influences, because they will impact you. Peers, I know when I was a freshman, I heard from my friends that are upperclassmen, maybe they're going to Wharton this year, and they said, "Oh, this is all I did." And I suddenly thought, that's what I need to do to be successful. And then I heard from someone else who's going to Princeton. This is what they did. And now I'm thinking, this is what I need to do. And now I need to do both of these two things to be successful. And it's really not the case. And you really have to find something that you're passionate about. Because when you talk about the mindset, it's not going to work if you're not willing to spend the time and energy to make it successful. Because you can't do everything. I know we're talking about non-academics, but each of you will have a very rigorous, I'm assuming very rigorous academic background as well. So all these things you all have to come in collaboration, really work together for you to really have a successful career. Now, I've talked about that briefly, but the key is, and the focus of my presentation is really how do you get there? And that's when we talk about the approach aspect, because there's no one-step solution, but it's really a mentality that you can bring to different situations. And when we look at those gears, that you think of them as pillars of what you need to do. So the first thing, and this is where I move into some of my experiences, sharing my experiences, the biggest thing in building this winning mindset is to take action. I can't stress this enough, because good things, this is one my dad always told me when I was young, good things don't come to those who wait. Good things are not going to magically fall in their lap. You have to be a go-getter. You have to work for them. But the big question is, how do you work for them? Because you might be thinking, how do I find these opportunities that my friend might have? How do I find this research internship? How do I start a club with a huge impact? And the key with that is you have to go outside your comfort zone. And my experience with this is that when I started FLI, I actually started in 2016, started in 7th grade. When I started working with this, I started small. I started with a few of my friends, and we were all hesitant. Of course, as 7th graders, we were very immature, and we weren't sure a lot of the things how we could grow it. But then as I grew older, as I worked with my mentor, who I'm very glad I got to meet, Dr. Amy Liu, who's actually a professor at Sacramento State, as I got to work with her, I really got to see that it's really important to have that mentality, not just to be okay with what you have right now, but to always be looking bigger, thinking about how you can move two things, move people and move money. And because when you look at things in life, those are the two cores. How can you get more people to support your cause? Breaking BEARriers, for example, mobilizing over 100 people today, 145 now. Or how can you mobilize, get people to help you in your initiative? And that's how you become a leader. My goal with this, sharing some of this advice, and I'm sure a lot of my rest of my panelists, is really to, how can you take that next step to become a leader and lead big things? And you step outside your comfort zone. And that's one way I've done that, is really just to reach out. Something with FLI is just reaching out to different people, whether contacting them through email or face-to-face or Facebook Messenger, just reaching out, talking to more people and making friendships. Because that's how you spread. And that's one way we spread to so many schools in so many places. And from that, just to take initiative. Don't do what's easy and you think looks good. Because in the end, the most rewarding things, and I'm not just talking about the leadership aspect, but when you think about what's rewarding for yourself as a human being, this is what's really important. Now, the second key, and I think is the biggest takeaway that I wish I knew more about when I am in your position, is to really just be open. There are so many opportunities out there, whether in school, whether in your community, that you won't know about unless you're open. And high school is really a time for you to explore. High school is not a time just to focus on one thing, because there's so many other aspects out there. When we talk about, there's a reason you're taking 6 courses. You're not just taking math. I like numbers, but I'm not taking math. I'm also taking other courses. And that's why there's so many other things that come out of that. And when you're open, you get to really see those things. And I might be talking in too much of a finance tone here, but there's something called an opportunity cost, and which means like a trade-off. You might think that you do one thing, you can't do another. But the key is when you listen to other people, when you're open and you come to presentations such as these, and I think you guys are taking that first step, you're willing to spend a few minutes of your time to listen to experiences, listen to other people. And that's the big key, just to keep your options open. And one big example of this for myself really can be summarized with these 2 pictures, Spanish and PE. You might be wondering, how do these 2 things relate? And I'll tell you. I'll tell you how these 2 things work together. So when I was in high school, when I was in my freshman year, at the end of it, I was taking a Spanish class, and through that class, I was able to meet a lot of upperclassmen, talking about something called DECA. If you don't know that, it's basically a business organization. And obviously, I'm interested in finance, so I thought, hey, this sounds fun. I want to do it. So next year, I decided to take a marketing class. In order to do DECA, you have to take a marketing class. So I decided to do that. Take that first step, become the first sophomore to take that in my school. But then there was a problem. When, like many public schools, we had over 3,000 students, there's a problem with their schedule. And I wasn't able to get into a marketing class because they had no space in PE. Now I thought, what do I do? What do I do from here? My counselor's my counselor right there told me, don't worry about it. Just ditch marketing. We'll try to fit you in some PE class somewhere else. But then, this is something that I really thought, that's it. I have to give up on my dream of following my passion for marketing, for finance. And as I look more, talk with some of my teachers I had relationships with, I was able to look outside the box and really be open. And I thought, what if I just took Spanish somewhere else? Maybe come in every week and take it that way. And through that experience, I was able to get into a marketing class and talk about DECA. And I don't want to talk too much about how the specifics work there, but I can tell you this is one of the biggest catalysts for my high school career. Because once I got into that class, once I became the first sophomore to take DECA, a whole series of other opportunities. I already had a lot of good relationships working in FLI. But through this experience, I got to work with a lot more teachers. And from there, I got to work with administration. That's how I got in contact with my superintendent. And from there, the possibilities really kept going. I got to work with, go to advocacy trips to our capital in Sacramento to talk with even higher ups there, really make a difference, not just in my community, but somewhere else. And keep going from there and there. I was able to eventually even go to Sacramento to be a candidate for a student board member. So that just shows you how a small thing, like skipping Spanish class, can really take me from that classroom into DECA, where I was also able to compete in international competition and succeed there. But also to other aspects, such as working with my superintendent, with my principal, building those relationships are really strong as well. And I think the biggest key is that we don't realize often, and I don't want to talk too long about this, is that we often don't realize how much is out there. We don't realize the relationships that our superintendents or our principals have that are actually open to all of us as students. And that's something that's big key. And I was also get to meet one of our panelists tonight, Teeny, who actually really helped me through this process as well. And I'll let her talk more about her experiences, but just being open will really spark all these things to you. And I'm running out of time, but the last piece of advice I sort of want to bring is that just to keep going. And something I think people really think too much about is maybe it's important to do a lot of things, but just to get involved in everything. And I don't think that's the right mentality, because the core of high school is you can't do everything. And it's really good to do one thing well. It's really not, and that's so it's not just rewarding for, not just on a college application or another application aspect, but just for you as a person. What can you make the most rewarding for yourself? And the best way you can do that is keep pushing. Work past those challenges. You will face challenges. Take risks and keep going. Don't give up. We usually, almost all the times in our life, we don't do something enough. It's usually not that we spent too long on something. We didn't follow our passion enough. And I think that's one of the reasons people have regrets in high school. They just gave up something too early. And that my last piece of advice is just to keep going. Follow your passions and build that mentality. Once you're open, once you're taking initiative, take those two things and follow them. See them through and don't give up easily. So that concludes my presentation. I just wanted to go over that sort of aspect of my experience. And if you had any other questions, we're going to have a Q&A session later on. If you're interested in finance, I can answer those questions. But other than that, thank you. I'll stop sharing, and I'll let Angelina and the rest of our organizers move to the next presenter. Thank you.
Oliver, thank you for presenting. I loved how you talked about not just succeeding, but also taking it to the next level and becoming a leader. I thought that was super important. And if it's okay, we have a couple of questions that our audience had for you. So one of them is, how do you keep yourself from negativity and becoming depressed in stressful times?
Yeah, I think one aspect of that is, that's why when I mentioned earlier, is that you have to do something you really love, you're really passionate about, and that's something that will help you work past that. There is going to be tough times, you will have lows, but when you have that negativity, it's important just to, first of all, have someone to talk to, have a team, right? You're not just one person, you really should be working to find a team, find some other people that are interested in the same event, and together work past it. It's not a one-man show, it's not a one-person thing. It's really a team effort in all of these aspects.
Thank you.
Second, we have Rajuda, who will be talking about passion and character. Rajuda will be attending Rice University in the fall. Throughout her time at Dublin High, she has been a member of the Irish Marching Band as well as Color Guard. Outside of school, she enjoys working at Chabot Space and Science Center and is a TA for UC Berkeley's Academic Talent Development. Rajuda, do you have anything to add before we let you take over?
Well, one thing, I actually am not in color guard, just in band, but you guys will be discovering a lot about me as I talked about my passions. So let's get started, shall we? I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. Alrighty. 1 second. All right, so hi everyone, I'm Rajuda, as they have said. I'm here to talk about passion and character.
Can I really quick interrupt? Whoever's annotating, please stop. And Rajuda, if you go to the top right corner of view options on the sharing screen, can you go up to view options, the drop down, and press the disable annotations, because it's really annoying.
It's extremely disrespectful to the guest speakers who have given up time in their evening to come here to give a speech. So annotating, it's really disrespectful and it doesn't add anything to the presentation.
Alrighty, I'll just get into it then. So, what is passion? And throughout this presentation, I just put a bunch of quotes about passion because quotes are inspirational. And passion often arises from inspiration. And so what is passion? And I feel like a lot of people look into it too deeply. They overanalyze what makes them happy. But it really is just what you deeply love. So when I talk about passion, usually I'll be referring to doing something that you love. And honestly, to start off, like as Oliver said at around the end of his presentation, you need to like follow your passions. You know, it's not a cliche when you say follow your heart. People say it all the time, but it's true. And as for me, I guess I should probably talk about some of my passions. There are quite a few, and they are very varied. Um, for one thing, I was in marching band all 4 years of high school and 3 years in middle school. In addition, in addition to music, I love learning languages. I speak some Mandarin. I love writing. I love history. It's what I'm majoring in. And oddly enough, even though I'm not a STEM major, I really, really do love science, especially space science. That's why I work at a space and science center. And so you guys will be learning a lot about these passions as I talk about them throughout this presentation. And a lot of people, as they enter high school, and as far as I can tell, many of the people who are attending this are sort of entering high school or in the beginning of high school. A lot of people are confused about like how do you like find your niche? How do you find your place in high school? How do you find what you really love while you're there? And my personal advice is just like try a bunch of things out. Like you have to try what works, and that doesn't just apply to high school, it applies to everything. Anytime in your life, you can always try something new. Be open, as was said before. I know I personally have tried like an absurd amount of different activities before finding a few things that I loved. I know that I played piano for 7 or 8 years before I quit, and now I can't play piano at all, but I did it for a long time. I tried it out. It didn't really work for me. Turned out woodwinds were more my thing. That's just how it goes sometimes. You will try things and you will not like them, but how do you know when you're passionate about something, right? How do you know what sticks? Well, in general, I found that it's something that you're excited about, obviously, but on a more visceral level, it's something that makes you want to wake up in the morning. Even if you got like 5 hours of sleep the night before, you lose track of time when you're doing it, even if you spend hours and hours. And whenever like something like a road bump comes up, whenever it's sort of tricky, you feel really conflicted about quitting. And I think that's the true sort of deeper mark of being passionate about something. When you feel really conflicted about quitting, when I guess other people might just be like, okay, I'm out. And that sort of brings me to another point, which is passions can be spread very thin. They can be over very many different fields, and they can also change over time, which is totally okay. You know, we're people, we're changing, we're developing, especially teenagers. We're discovering what we love. And I think a decent example of this from my life is my time at Chabot Space and Science Center, which obviously Space Science Center. I'm a history major. I thought I was going to be a STEM major when I first joined, like my sophomore year, I think. But when I realized that, you know, STEM wasn't exactly what I wanted to go into, I didn't quit because there was something about Chabot that I really loved. And I think the thing that it was the fact that I get to interact with different people and I got to teach. So even though it was science, teaching is one of the things that I love. I love tutoring, teaching. So I stuck with that, even though I was seriously considering quitting because it wasn't in my field of interest. And so when you love something, that kind of brings me to a different point. Like, what can passion do for you? And the first step is perseverance and commitment, because obviously when you love something so much, you want to keep doing it, which seems kind of obvious, but a lot of people, I feel, forget about that, especially when they're like in that high school environment where it seems like academics are the main focus of it all. And a lot of people kind of go through a phase where they like quit or they change a lot of the extracurriculars they did. But if you show perseverance and commitment, I think that's a true mark of passion, because oftentimes, obviously, conflict is going to rise no matter what you do. I have a bunch of stories, like an oddly large amount of stories about that during my time in band, because we went through 4 directors in 4 years. We didn't have access to the field for 2 out of the 4 seasons that I marched. 1, my junior year because of fires. 2, because they were renovating the field. If any current high schoolers remember, there weren't any football games because they were returfing the field. And so we had to I was on the leadership team at that time, and we had to kind of come up with a way to go around that. And that involved practicing in the gym at sometimes, which is not easy for a marching band. Another one, when we weren't allowed to practice on the field, oftentimes we practiced on a grass field, which was very muddy, and also the home of a flock of angry geese, goose poop field. So pushing through that sort of things really is what demonstrates commitment to your passion. It demonstrates general perseverance, like the ability to stick to something no matter what the odds are. And it's these kinds of things that really lead to the second part of this presentation, which is building character. And I know it's a lot of people are like, oh, this will build character and that'll build character. But what is character, right? It seems like a really vague term. And to put it simply, character is the sum of qualities that define a person. Character isn't personality. I feel like that's something that a lot of people get mixed up in. Your character isn't like you being outgoing or you being introverted. It's who you are on a deeper level. And so hardship is one of the things that people will say builds character, and that's true, because when you pursue your passion, where you stick through the hardship, that's gonna make something, that's what makes you really unique, the way you respond to that sort of pushback from the universe. And that's sort of why pursuing a passion helps you stand out from the crowd a little bit more, because you're developing who you are as you pursue it. And knowing who you are is really important, especially because, you know, colleges, internships, programs expect teenagers who are frankly not even a fourth through their entire life to know who they are at such a young age. So that's why, you know, pursuing your passions can help. It gives you a sense of identity. It tells you a bit more about your character. One example I have from my real life is I did an internship at the 1947 Partition Archive, which is a digital humanities nonprofit. And it was in Berkeley near Ashby Station. And I woke up every morning at 6 a.m. During the summer between my junior and senior year, took the BART to Ashby Station, worked from 9 to 5, and then came back. And then that happened every single day. I also balanced that with my TA gig. And that taught me a lot of maturity and self-reliance, because BART is a very, very strange place, to tell you the least. It's something best you experience by yourself. But that taught me a lot about how to live on your own, how to rely on yourself, and a lot about being mature in sort of these adult situations. And so let's talk a little bit about leadership. So you've done it. Let's say you found your passion, you stuck to it, you overcame some hardship.
Rice University.
All right, so you have found your passion, you stuck to it, you overcame hardship, you've got some experience under your belt. Now what? In general, people tend to recognize that when you really care about something and you have some experience, you might end up in a position of leadership. It's a combination of, like I said, experience and passion. It can take all sorts of forms, whether it's like active leadership, like running a club like you guys, or maybe something a little bit less active, like, you know, just being a role model for people. If you're a senior member of a club, oftentimes leadership isn't just a position. And I think leadership is a really great experience to have, because it gives you responsibility. And as someone who has like sort of mastered the rules of like the little extracurricular that you're in, it can be fun to sort of guide people through the process and teach them what you were taught. And I think that it's in general a great experience. And while that responsibility is great, I also wanted to talk just a little bit about burnout. Because when you pursue your passion single-handedly and you try and balance your many extracurriculars with school unless you're taking like some AP courses. That's going to take a lot out of you. And so that's why just a little bit about don't overextend yourself. Don't try and take on too much. Know your limits, set your boundaries. And a lot of times people might take you for granted if you are in that leadership position. And if it does get to the point where you can't take it anymore, no one is going to judge you if you take a break. And that break will help you rediscover your passion, recover your mental health. And in the end, passion isn't just about your extracurriculars in high school. Right now, it may seem like that's what it's all about. But as young people, we often forget how long life is. Like, we live in the now, which is a great thing, but our lives are going to go on for a very long time. And you'd be surprised how many people like deprive themselves of following what makes them happy because they think that, you know, if they work hard on their academics and all that now, then their life will ease up later. They'll get to pursue their passions. That's not necessarily true. A lot of the times it only gets harder from where you are right now. So if you pursue your passions at a young age, you'll develop a habit of doing what you love. And I think that's just something really great because it sounds really nice to do something that you love for the rest of your life. And I don't have any like little anecdote for this, but I feel very lucky to have spent my high school years doing what I did, which was balancing a bunch of extracurriculars with school. Even though I lost some sleep, I would not regret it at all. And in the end, saying that you did something with no regrets, that's really a great thing. And just to sort of kind of bring it all together, you know, passion is the baseline for living a successful, fulfilled life. If you have passion for what you do, you know, you'll stick with it, you'll gain experience, develop some character, figure out who you are, and you'll live a fulfilled life. And honestly, that's the goal of it all. So thank you for listening to me ramble on about this. Thank you to Breaking Barriers for doing this. I'll stop sharing my screen now. And yeah, that's all I have.
Yeah, I think having an open mind and having a lot of problem solving skills really does help contribute to you finding your passion. And having a passion is really nice because you have fun while like being successful and living a fulfilled life, like Rajuda said. We just have one question. I know a lot of us here have a hard time leaving our comfort zone. So how did you step out of your comfort zone to try new things or hobbies?
That's a very good question. I think that perhaps the most obvious example in my life was probably marching band because contrary to what a lot of people think, marching band is a reasonably athletic activity, and I am not a very athletic person to say the least. What getting out of my comfort zone took, it was a matter of convincing myself that if I didn't do this, then I might miss out on some of the greatest opportunities and some of the greatest memories that I would make, which I think is totally true. I think that if you want to step out of your comfort zone, you need to really get into that mindset where you're like, I should try new things because I don't know what I'm going to miss if I don't try them out.
Yeah, just having that mindset of pushing yourself to do new things is really important for trying new things and having an open mind.
Okay, so next, Joshua will be talking about mentorship and self-discipline. Joshua will be attending UCLA in the fall and will be majoring in computer engineering. He was president of the Gale Force Robotics Club. Joshua, is there anything you want the audience to know about you before we start?
No, I think you actually just said the first part of my script, so I guess we'll just jump right into it.
Go ahead.
All right, so hi, she already mentioned, but I guess it wouldn't be too harmful to reiterate. I'm going to UCLA studying computer science and engineering. I'm really excited to be here today to be sharing my experiences in leadership and mentorship. So basically, I started out high school as like a lowly freshman. I know a lot of you are also going into high school, and you're going to experience that as well. So have fun with that. I joined robotics with zero experience in the field, and I looked as like a novice member, I looked up to people like Josh, the guy who founded our club, and Derek, who had robots so advanced that even to this day, a lot of us still don't understand how they were built. So to me, it was like looking up on like a mountain, Mount Olympus, with like all the gods on top, right? It's really intimidating, but you kind of at the same time wish that you were up there. Like, I mean, at least for me, at least, I wish I was like as good as them, right? So that was my kind of ambition as a freshman. I wanted to kind of be, put this more simply, I wanted to be like a legend. So I'll try not to get too technical with how like the entire robotic system works, because it's pretty messy and complicated. But really quick, I'm just going to explain how like qualifying works. So there are 3 levels: regional, state, worlds, right? International. So if you win a competition at regionals, if you win a qualifying award at regionals, you go to states. If you win a qualifying award at states, you go to worlds. And worlds is super fun. You get to meet teams from like China, Singapore, Russia, Saudi Arabia, a bunch of countries. It's really cool. Everyone comes together. It's a great experience. Worlds is kind of the ultimate goal of any robotics team. You get to like take a week off school, make a ton of cool memories, and Worlds really just a great time overall. So it's a highlight of the year. Yeah. So okay. So back to the story a bit. When I was a freshman, I worked really, really hard to learn whatever I could, and also I wanted to go to Worlds with my team. So I worked with my team captain, Jake. It's not his real name, but by the way, I don't want to expose him. He was my leader and mentor, and he taught me a lot of fundamental things that I still remember to this day, and it was pretty useful. Our team worked really hard, and we qualified to Worlds, which was really, really good. We were hyped about it, but there was an experience that did kind of act as a turning point for me. So basically, we were going to take our end of Worlds photograph, right? We were all like lined up. I was a little freshman. In my hands, I was holding this award, right? It was the one of the awards that we'd won at a regional tournament, I believe. And basically, Jake, right, he comes up to me. Sorry. Jake comes up to me, right? And then I see him looking down at me. He's like smiling, and slowly he pulls it out of my hands, and he says, "I don't want you to hold this. It's not for you," right? And then he takes it away and he hands it to my friend. And they both look at each other, grin and smile, and I'm just sitting there like empty-handed, you know? So I'm going to let that sink in, because in that moment when I was a freshman, I felt powerless. Seeing his condescending smile and like the humiliation and thinking that I was nothing. Like, no one cares about the hard work that I put in. No one cares about the enthusiasm that I had to grow. And I was trash, and they could have done it without me, right? And that's the thing about being a leader. You have so much power when you are a leader. You have the power to build people up or break them down. When I became a captain, I understood what it felt like to be in Jake's position. But I made it a point to build up and encourage each one of my team members, even like the freshmen and novices. Instead of dismissing their work as stupid and amateurish, I welcomed their opinions and unbridled imaginations, encouraging them to learn and grow along the way. And in doing so, I became a mentor of sorts. And from this, what I learned was that our team relationship and environment really bloomed. It was like the complete opposite of the more toxic team that I used to be part of. You could tell from one interaction that we really cared about each other. We wanted each other to succeed. And that's the power you have as a leader. You can make your environments suffocating and toxic, or you can make them encouraging and motivational, and maybe even feel like a second home. And that's the difference between a leader and a mentor. A leader cares about the team, and a mentor cares about the people. And in my experience, I tried to be both. And that was how I discovered what was important to me. It wasn't the awards, it wasn't the glory, it wasn't the grades. It was the people I mentored and taught who have become far better than I could ever dream of being. Like, I was never the greatest, nor was I the smartest, but they couldn't have done it without me, right? When my team competed at Worlds, we took home a really big award. And maybe this was subconscious. I wasn't like thinking about it at the time. But when it came down to taking the photograph, I took the award and gave it to a freshman member of my team, because I know that's gonna like have a good effect on him, right? I said, "Hey, I want you to hold this because you've earned it, right? And putting yourself in his shoes, I'm telling you that I want you to know that I saw all your enthusiasm and your hard work, and I loved it. You were incredible, and we could not have done this without you, right? Good job. I am so proud of you, right? That has so much power. And for those of you who don't know this yet, this is going to be you one day. One day you're going to be the senior. You're going to be the leader, the veteran, the paragon. People are going to look up to you. You have power. Use it and be kind. You'll never know the full effect of a few kind words. But one thing's for sure, your impact will outlast your achievements. So, final thoughts. Sorry, that was quite a bit. Going back to the first question, did I become a legend? Did I end up at the top of Mount Olympus with the rest of the cool kids? No. But I do have a legacy in the hundreds of students that I've reached. I've seen them grow from inexperienced novices like I used to be to hardened veterans, and I can't wait to watch them succeed in the years to come. And they're the ones who are probably going to be legends. So before I wrap up, really quick, I just want to ask you this time, before you start high school, for those of you who aren't in high school yet, or for those who are in high school, what is your legacy going to be? Are you going to be that one student who loads up on APs and extracurriculars to beef up your resume? Oh, yeah, I know, you've been thinking about it. Or are you going to be someone who works not only to succeed, but wants to make an actual difference? See, nothing changes after Mr. AP and extracurriculars 5,000 leaves, right? They took what they needed, they threw it on their resume, and they left. But maybe you can be better than that. Try volunteering because you want to make a difference, not because you want to get your hours. Start an organization, not because you want to slap it on your resume, but because you are invested in what it stands for and you care about the people that it reaches to. Be a mentor, care about someone else that you're invested in them and you want them to succeed. I promise you will get so much farther than a person who remains shallow, fake, and uncaring. By the way, colleges notice this too. They will want you because you are unique and you're genuine, right? In a sea of dry and artificial applications, yours is going to stand out. And you are young. Be ambitious. Start your own project. Start your own club. Take risks. Whether it's like an outstanding success or a catastrophic failure, your work will never be in vain. You will always come out smarter, more seasoned. You will always come out a better person with more experience. Make the most out of high school. It only lasts 4 years. That goes by in a snap, right? It's so fast. Leave your mark. Do something that actually makes a difference. I promise you will not regret it. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I was blown away. We have some questions from the audience. Can you talk about how to become a mentor for other people, especially for someone who's more quiet or more introverted?
Okay, so I kind of see where you're coming from. I was pretty quiet and introverted back then. Maybe I still am now, but being a mentor is honestly about sharing sort of a passion and knowing that, hey, I know a little bit more about this subject than this person is, but instead of like being toxic and flexing on them, maybe I can like teach them how it kind of works, and kind of that teaching develops into, I kind of care about this person and their success. That's, I guess, how a mentorship is usually born, at least it was in my case.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Next up, we have Tinny, who will be talking about presenting your best self. Throughout her time in high school, Tinny has held numerous leadership positions and has been committed to serving her community. She is most widely known for her role as the Dublin Unified School District Student Board Representative. Tinny, do you have anything to add before we allow you to speak?
No, thank you, Kevin, for that introduction. I'd just like to thank everyone for being here today, and especially thank Christy and the Breaking BEARriers Club for organizing this event and trying to plan outreach to middle school and underclassmen. Okay, so hi, my name is Teeny. I graduated from Dublin High School this year, and during my time at school as our district student board representative, I was in ASB, and I've been in office in a wide variety of clubs ranging from CSF Key Club, and Future Business Leaders of America. Because of the different positions I've held, I have to publicly speak, whether it's a pre-planned speech or a completely impromptu speech where I'm asked to talk just on the spot with no preparation. I know that a lot of those watching are current middle schoolers or underclassmen, and you might be a little bit intimidated on how to navigate the different realms of high school and learn how to make the most of your experience. Although I'm pretty comfortable public speaking now with or without preparation, I wasn't always, and a lot of different experiences have shaped me to become a stronger speaker. I'm just going to share some tips and some of my experiences with you on how I think you can present yourself in the best way possible so that you can maximize your impact during your time in high school. Before I start, I want to preface this by detailing the organization of my talk. This is not as much of a reflection, but more of a very concrete couple of step explanation with a couple of examples so that the audience knows how to respond and receive the information accordingly. So my number one step is something that a lot of my co-speakers have already touched on, and it's to step outside of your comfort zone. I strongly believe that true growth starts outside of your comfort zone, and in order for you to become better at something, you need to be willing to put yourself out there and take the leap, even if it's intimidating. And being able to present yourself confidently, speak articulately, and have good social skills is something that's extremely important in high school, because in order to become a leader of a club, you need to give a speech in front of your peers and get elected. Almost all private colleges require you to have an interview component. And obviously, beyond your high school career, jobs require interviews, and social skills are crucial for networking. So if you're someone who is walking in high school that's relatively shy and reserved, but you to go from being someone that's shy and reserved to immediately joining a speech and debate club, I think that putting yourself out there, taking the leap, and joining a club where you can pair up with other individuals that are beginners will really help you hone the skills that you're looking to improve. And I genuinely think that if you want to succeed in something, you have to be 100% committed and take the leap. Even though it might be difficult the first time, you might fail the first time you put yourself out there. I think giving yourself that opportunity to try, to fail, to learn from those failures and regroup and come back stronger will eventually help you get better. My second tip, and this is what specifically really worked for me and helped me become a better speaker, is to become an advocate for something. When you're an advocate for something, you're not just speaking for yourself, but you're speaking for an entire cause. A cause that has many other people behind it and many other people that are dependent on the cause. And let me just elaborate on that a little bit. When people start public speaking, some of the thoughts that go through their head are like, okay, what words can I use to make myself seem smarter? How can I sound more eloquent? Will this metaphor or quote help me seem like a better speaker? What will other people think? These are some really common thoughts that go through people's head when they first start public speaking. And it's natural to be self-conscious when you're talking in front of a group of people. But for me, that really changed when I was sworn in as Dublin Unified's student board representative. Because I wasn't just a voice for myself, I was a voice for all 13,000 students in our district. So when I spoke, my focus shifted from how I sounded to how effectively I could deliver my message and how effectively the other trustees could understand what I was saying and how it could resonate with them so that there could be a better vote, or a vote that reflects the ideologies of the students. So what happened then, like it's almost always nerve-wracking to speak in front of a room full of adults, some who publicly oppose your views, but I do it because I know it's not just about me. Last year in 2019, I was led into the boardroom, like hand in hand with a police officer, because there was literally like hundreds of teachers rallying outside the boardroom. And inside the boardroom, there were even more teachers with signs, and it was like a frenzied mob. And it was like, to anyone, it would be really intimidating to walk into a room like that and having to publicly speak about teacher raises or things that are super controversial. But I did it because I know that it's not just about me. This is about all of the other students that I represent. And if my voice can make a difference, then I have to use it. And there's something about the urgency that's associated with being an advocate that compels you to speak and compels you to speak concisely, effectively, and powerfully that you just can't get if you're not as attached to the cause. Some of you might know that there was a widely publicized and reported board meeting this April about the grading policy of the district and whether we should have letter grades or pass-fail or something in between. And students, parents, teachers, almost everyone wrote to the board and they expressed how any other policy except for pass-fail would disadvantage them greatly. But there was still like a 7.5-hour conversation about it that was extremely emotionally charged. And like, obviously it's difficult to speak up during times like that. But when I spoke, I wasn't focused on myself and what words could make me sound better. I was focused on the impact of my words and how many people it could affect. Good speakers don't deliver their messages well just because they want to. They do it because they think that they have to. When you think that your cause, your message, what you're trying to convey to other people is so important that they have to know it, these self-doubt things like, okay, do I sound smart? Did I use the right word? Like, these things start to melt away and you're able to speak with more conviction, more powerfully, and to be honest, more sincerely. So my number one advice, what worked for me the most, would be to join a club or like speak at a rally about a cause that's important to you, whether it's like climate change, gun control, like anything. Like today we noticed that Oliver spoke so passionately about his commitment to his financial literacy club, and he was able to do that because he is so invested in something. So when you are truly passionate about something, that voice shines through and you're able to relay your message a lot more concisely. My next tip to presenting yourself better would be to focus on the other person instead of yourself. And I know this sounds a little bit contradictory, so hear me out. I believe that in order to make a great impression on someone, whether it's an interviewer or an audience that you're speaking to, it's important to connect with them. Instead of focusing on how others will perceive you, as do I seem smart, do I seem well-spoken, the key is to find common ground with someone and resonate with a core value that both of you share in your speech or conversation with them. When I was a candidate for this State of California student board member position, I was initially selected out of hundreds. I was one of the top 12 candidates, and I was flown out to, I was just taken to Sacramento in the middle of a school week, and I was told that you have to give a speech in front of like 60 or 70 students from all across California, and based on your speech and whether they like you and your values, you will be voted onto the top 6. And onto the top 6, you go from top 3, and that's when you interview in the governor's office. So it was really intimidating to me because I didn't know any of the 60 or 70 students. Like, I'd never met them before. And the first time I was going to see them is when I was giving a speech, and their impression and their perception of me would be what my advancement was hinging on. So it was obviously intimidating, but in my speech, I didn't just focus on myself and try to make myself seem appealing. I appealed to our shared values because everyone at that conference was there to promote greater equity in education and student voice. So my speech was geared around a shared value, which was empowering student voice and making changes within our education system. And because of that, I was able to gain the vote needed to get into the top 6. And eventually I interviewed in Governor Gavin Newsom's office as one of the top 3 candidates. And it's the same when you're interviewing for a college or a club. While making sure to talk about yourself and your accomplishments, it's extremely important to focus on your shared enthusiasm for the core value of the club or the school that you're applying to, because most of the time your college interview is, it's with an alumni of the school. And lastly, this is pretty simple and it applies to all things, but I do think that it's especially important when you're talking about public speaking, interview skills, and anything like that. But it's just practice. Just like any other skill, public speaking and being able to present yourself is something that gets better with time and experience. And if you're serious about delivering the best speech that you can, you should ask your teachers or peers for feedback. Do it many times, use the revisions that you get, modify it, and make yourself better. If you're serious about preparing for an interview, then set up a mock interview with one of your teachers or a trusted adult and use their feedback and see how you come across as the best version of yourself. But more than anything, I would say to focus on being authentic and connecting with people. And also remember that be straightforward, be concise. I believe that brevity is a charm of eloquence. That's a common quote. And when you speak concisely, authentically, and you aim to resonate with people, usually your message comes across clearly, powerfully, and with a lot of conviction. And regardless of whether you choose to be an advocate, like regardless, when you're speaking powerfully as an advocate, the skill and the conviction and the way that you carry yourself during that period of time transfers onto your personality and the way that you present yourself throughout all walks of life. So yeah, that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for talking, Tinny. I think it's really important that we all take an opportunity to just step forward and make a change in our communities. And it's really important just to have quality rather than what we hope looks good on our resume or our college applications. And with that, I'd like to thank Tini for speaking.
Okay, next we have Christy, who will be talking about teamwork. Christy was president of the Science Club and Gale Force Robotics Club in high school and competed in robotics through all 4 years. She will be attending UC Berkeley in the fall. Christy, is there anything you want the audience to know about you before we start?
Yeah, thank you for the introduction. I'll go ahead and share my screen and present. So hello everyone, thank you for having me here today. I'm really excited to talk to you today about teamwork. So starting in middle school, around your age, I realized that my passion is making things together with people. Following that calling through writing for the school newsletter, building awesome robots, and starting a science club, I'm now studying electrical engineering and computer science at UC Berkeley. So leadership in the context of teamwork is something I've had a lot of time to reflect on and develop. And today I'm really excited to talk to you guys and share my experiences in Gale Force Robotics Club. This club is really close to my heart. I started out from a know-nothing to becoming captain and leading my own team. And in my senior year, I was elected president of the club, which had grown to over 80 students. So as we've heard tonight, in any team, a leader is more than a title. It's a person who brings people together under a shared vision and works to serve as well as steer the ship. So how do you create a culture that brings people close, who motivates and drives a group to create something beautiful? From my experiences in Gale Force, I want to share 3 lessons I've learned that I think are the most important. So first of all, I learned to find the fun. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with robotics culture. Maybe some of you have older siblings in the club, but there's no better way to say it. Robotics is an obsession. If you learn to love it, it will consume your life. Lunchtime, 5 hours after school to 4 a.m. in a freezing garage, any time is up for grabs to discuss strategy, design, and ideas to prototype a lighter, faster, more robust mechanism. Meetings would be every day after school, and for a team captain, oftentimes extending past 10 p.m. I remember when my teammate and I found ourselves sitting next to each other in history, that period basically became a mini robotics meet, and I can tell you not much US history was learned that semester. For many of us, the reason we pour so much time and energy into a club is not because we are forced to by our parents or because we think it'll get us into a prestigious college. It's because we love making beautiful machines, and we love doing it with one another. If that's not why students come to robotics, it's what makes them stay. And I can still see it, all 8 to 10 of us members, the loving co-parents of a little 15-pound aluminum baby. Under different leadership, culture can vary vastly from team to team. Some are really hyper-design focused and bond over their crazy ideas. Others balance technical work with basketball games, friendly banter. There's no perfect answer, but I've observed that the most successful captains have that infectious energy and curiosity that draws people on an adventure with them. Some examples of robots that are born of this kind of team synergy. I thought you might like these. A design that shoots 4 balls per second dead straight into a net. In the middle, one that slam dunks a great clump of stars over a fence, and a no-motor mechanism that can pick up and stack a cone. The last one is something we actually built. So all of these cool things, truth is, we follow the people who drive us onwards, who inspire us to do things we enjoy and take pride in. So, just as others have said, have fun, what sets your brain aflame, and maybe you'll become one of those leaders who inspires others. All right, of course, I realize life isn't all fun and games. In the big picture, it can look like a great adventure, but in the day-to-day, you come up against boredom, obstacles, you get stuck in the mud. What happens when it's the 10th iteration of trying to fix a janky lift that sounds like a firecracker? What do I say when teammates lose interest and shrug off responsibilities? What do I do now with COVID, bored out of my mind, with heaps of time stuck inside? That's when initiative and organization kick in. Initiative is both an opportunity and a responsibility. The ones who take the first steps often become leaders, and leaders must act to lead a pack. Organization is just as necessary a next step. It takes a sustained effort to create something great with a team, and that means a plan. In robotics, several times during the year, you'll come to the point when you have to rebuild, and it's up to the leader to decide when that's necessary to tear down your hard-earned work, and depending on the amount of planning and modeling done, and whether parts were ordered in time, it can take anywhere from 3 days to 2 weeks to a month. This is only one of many decisions that need immense planning. Don't just consume and expect opportunities to be delivered to you on a silver platter. Be the one who contemplates wacky possibilities, feeds your own curiosity, plans for contingencies. Link up with a friend to teach yourself the program. Pick up books like Melinda Gates' The Moment of Lift. Engage with peers and mentors that push you to think and see the needs around you. That first of initiative is often what starts the ball rolling to have that fun that I talked about in the first place. So, for my last point, hand in hand with taking initiative, and perhaps most importantly, be a leader who listens. And hopefully I haven't lost you yet and you're still listening to this. There are 2 experiences I wanted to talk about. First was when I first started out as a captain. I was rather insecure in myself. I wasn't very confident in my ability to lead and in my robotics knowledge. And all of those insecurities were exacerbated when one day, about within the first month of my captaincy, one of my members came up to me and told me that, frankly, team meetings were incredibly dull. He actually wanted to leave my team for another team. Hearing that, understandably, I was crushed, and it led to all sorts of thoughts about whether I wasn't good enough, whether it was because I was a girl and I couldn't fit in with the culture of robotics. But with considerable effort, I managed to shove aside my despair and self-blame, because that would not solve the issue. Rather, I met up with the member, I tried to find out, talk to him, and see what things I could change to adjust the team structure and encourage team bonding. And so, partly because of my experience with that programmer, we made some changes. We eventually started planning activities together that weren't just focused on robotics. We tried to involve everyone in discussions, and in the end, that is what helped me to develop into someone who shared equal standing with other members in my team, who respected others, where each of us had a specialized knowledge in building, programming, and design, and those interwove to refine and accelerate our development. So the strategy yielded results. Throughout competition season, we won the coveted Design and Excellence Awards and eventually traveled to compete internationally at Worlds. I'm personally convinced that great change happens when harnessing each person's individual ingenuity. Not everyone can have Elon Musk's vision or JFK's charisma, but anyone can listen and have an open mind. Maybe some of you have found yourselves carrying a late-night team project and presentation. That is a credit to your knowledge and hard work, but to find a way to include your team members and harness their knowledge, oh boy, that elevates the team tenfold. There's one last experience from Gale Force that I want to talk to you guys about, and it's a personally unforgettable one. Around midway through my last season, an event revealed that some members of the club had been targeting one of our female members with inappropriate remarks. In the ensuing drama, hurtful things were said by different parties within the club, and it was very heartbreaking for me to realize how my friend must have felt, with relations strained among teammates and internal feelings of doubt and anger. One of the first things I did when I heard the news was to find my friend and to listen to her story, to hug her as she cried, and to assure her that she was right to speak up. Hearing things from her perspective, I was faced with the horrific reality that this club, which I had always seen as supportive of newcomers and girls like myself, had not been that kind of environment for all members. In fact, as a leader, I had failed to hear and see that these unkind words were being said under my own nose. The situation only went downhill from there. Disappointed administrators and teacher advisors threatened to shut down our club, and with that, I almost reached a breaking point of despair. Even in the heat of the moment, how could everyone give up on us, a club that had done so much to grow its majority of well-intentioned members, to imbue our spirits with the love of learning, building, and making together? No, I could not let that happen. Perhaps, if we could hear them out, then we could negotiate. I worked with officers, arranging meetings to hear the administrators' and teachers' concerns and to advocate for the innocent majority. To combat toxic rumors, we publicly clarified misunderstandings and gently confronted those suspected of being involved. Finally, recognizing that we had to rebuild trust together, as a club, each member made a commitment to be welcoming and inclusive. Finally, to prepare for future conflicts, I worked with my officer team to establish clear procedure to communicate with advisors. Overall, that week, it definitely sounds like it was one of the most stressful and painful times in my memory, but it cemented forever the importance of being a leader who listens. Listening to my friend, to administrators, to our teacher advisors, and to all the members of the club was necessary to heal and draw the club back to that higher vision of what we were at heart. And so I say again, listen when you lead, take that time. At the end of the day, teamwork is messy, and you'll encounter situations no one can predict. But these three things that I've mentioned are actions that are within your control. Okay, here's a recap. If there's one perspective you can take away that underpins these 3 points, it is this. See each teammate as human, intrinsically valuable, with precious feelings and ideas to learn from. For me, that's the kind of leadership that both makes great robots and forges lifelong friendships. And it's the kind of leadership I sincerely hope you'll have the honor of finding. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much for presenting. We have a couple of questions from the audience. One person asked where they could find the robotics club.
Well, you can find the robotics club. They have a website, Gale Force Robotics. I believe it's github.io. You should be able to Google it, and it'll be on the website.
Yeah, just go ahead and Google it. Gale Force Robotics, probably the first website on there. I'm gonna have to warn you though, it's not a great website. So there's some forms there that you can fill out and get in contact with our leaders. Current president, I believe, is Neha. So you could email her and get in contact.
Thank you so much for presenting.
Thank you.
All right. Finally, Mehika will be talking about keeping momentum. Mehika founded FemForceUp, a non-profit organization dedicated to diminishing gender stereotypes. She was also the president of Dublin High School Speech and Debate for 3 years. Mehika, do you have anything to add before you start?
Hi, thank you so much for that introduction. Just to add on to it really quickly, give you a little bit of background about me. My passions include engineering, computer science, and social justice. And so I've explored leadership positions in those fields because I've wanted to get more involved in these communities and spread my passion to more people, which is something I plan on elaborating on during my speech. So just to begin, I'll start with a little anecdote and explain why it's important as I move on with my speech. So on the third day of school during my sophomore year of high school, I walked out of my Principles of Engineering class crying. We were expected to already know how to work with all of these new robotics parts and all of these different types of mechanisms that I'd never seen before. And all of the guys in the classroom seemed to already know a lot more than the girls did. They would make comments during the class period about how they wish they had more girls in the group to do the documentation and stuff like that. So you can probably already tell the kind of environment that I was in. Dealing with those kinds of remarks and talking to other girls in that class motivated me and strengthened my resolve to start my nonprofit, Femme Forca, which is designed to diminish gender stereotypes. I set up a whole structure for the organization with plans for different kinds of bonding, volunteering, and activism events. This was around March my sophomore year. I filed for corporate status in order to register the organization as a nonprofit and got everything into place, which obviously took a lot of work. And by the time August rolled around and my junior year started, I got a club started on Dublin High's campus to expose the organization to more students at school. So the ball was still rolling by the time we met the first couple of times at school, after which naturally everyone got busy with classes, other clubs, or extracurriculars, and we lost some of our momentum. Now, this isn't uncommon at Dublin High, where you can start a club about pretty much anything that you're passionate about. And a lot of students did want to explore leadership positions in these fields and causes that they were passionate about, but it was hard to maintain the momentum and actually do something with that interest, which is what I'm going to address today. Now, after we lost our momentum, we would occasionally remember Femme Forca and text in the group chat about getting our efforts more organized or just finding a way to restart what we had already started. But for a bit in the middle there, the momentum died down. Now, I'm telling you to show that even causes that are the most important to us and are the ones that we hold most near and dear can die off if there aren't any measures in place for you to check yourself. We picked Femme Forca back up after a while and were rededicated to it, this time making sure we kept each other in check. Now, from my experience, there are two very important ways to ensure that your leadership efforts don't die off. First, you need to make sure that as a leader, you can bring your group together to unite under your cause. If you're leading something, you are obviously very passionate about whatever it is that you're leading, hopefully. People who join your club or nonprofit organization are interested in the cause as well, but they're not necessarily as passionate as you are. You should always try to spread your passion to your audience and bring them along with you on your journey. Connect with them and try to understand what motivates them. And now I understand that bonding may not seem like the most important thing when thinking about how to effectively create a team and keep everything organized as a leader, but it's imperative that you are at least somewhat bonded with the people that you are working with and with the people that you're leading, because you need to understand what motivates them and why they're as involved or interested in the cause as you are. And once you have that connection, you'll be able to guide them along with you on your journey to do anything a lot easier than if you're coming from a place of not understanding them and not understanding why they're doing this with you. Another effective way of maintaining momentum is to keep an efficient, motivated leadership team. Each person keeps each other in check, making sure they're attending meetings and doing their part in managing or promoting the club. This way, if your efforts ever do die down, someone else on the team can temporarily take over or help you manage your load. It's also a great way of keeping yourself in check, because no matter how much we are passionate about a cause, it's very probable that we have other things on our plate and that we might have or get a bit distracted or let our momentum die down. This worked really well for me while I was president of Speech and Debate, because our team members were dedicated to the cause, which is why burnout wasn't really an option for us, because there was always someone else motivating us and saying, hey, did you check out this tournament? Did you sign everyone up for this tournament? It's coming up. And we were all able to kind of manage each other's load for each other. Finally, the best way to combat burnout is to make sure that your reasons for doing something are always 100% authentic. Only try to get involved in something if you really want to spend your time on it, because if you don't, it's going to be really obvious and it's just going to be unfair to other people who want you to lead that organization or that cause for you and are suffering the consequences of you not being able to manage your time. Finally, I think this was touched on before, but don't try to overburden yourself, especially with leadership positions. If you're spread too thin, you're obviously going to prioritize your more interesting or important responsibilities first. And if one of your clubs that you're a leader in isn't high on that list, it will die off. And it'll also be unfair to the people who are relying on you and counting on you as a leader. So don't bite off more than you can chew, because you'll just end up doing a worse job on all of your responsibilities than if you'd only signed up for the things that you're willing to spend a lot of time on. Do the things that you are passionate about, that you would be willing to sacrifice time and sleep for. I was also involved in FMP at school, which is our freshman mentoring program. So you guys are probably going to be in that next year, which taught me a lot about leadership. And every day that I was in FMP, I realized that my fellow FMP mentors and I have a lot of influence over the kind of environment that we create for our freshmen in class every day. As leaders in that room, we decided how that experience went for every student in that class. We decided the morale. If we were extra tired that day, obviously spirits were low in class. But if we were up there being leaders that students actually wanted to follow, that they could engage with and they have fun with, like Christy said, if you can get people along with you and get them motivated to be on your journey, and where you can lead them from point A to point B, that's the most ideal scenario that you can create for yourself. Finally, a lot of being a leader is managing other people and making sure that you keep their morale high as well. As outreach lead for the Build Club at our school, which is our school's engineering club, I learned how to harness other people's passions and apply them to constructive efforts for the club. You not only have to make sure people stay motivated, but also direct them to the right resources that further your organization's goals. Keeping momentum is all about taking other people with you on your journey, whatever that journey may be, not talking at others to do what you need them to do. I hope you guys use this advice later whenever you get involved in any sort of leadership position, just because it's a great way to remember why you were interested in doing something and making sure that you're not wasting your time. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think motivation, dedication, and unity are important not just among clubs, but your friend groups and peers. It's good to have dedication and unity for good relationships, not just with your friends, but with your teachers and everyone else around you. Yeah, thank you, Makika.
All right, now that all of our speakers have presented, let's begin the Q&A section. We will be taking questions from the audience, and any of the speakers can give an answer. Please type your questions in the chat box if you have any. One person asked specifically for Mahika, when I Google your nonprofit, I don't find anything. Your nonprofit is called Femi-Forca, right?
Yeah, I can attach a link to the website really quickly. There's an accent on the C, so it might not be coming up.
Does anyone have any additional questions they would like the speakers to answer? I would also like to apologize to the speakers on behalf of the whole team for some of the disrespect that some of our participants have been showing. It's extremely disrespectful to draw random lines on the slides or make random noises. These speakers have taken a lot of time out of their day to do this, and we are so thankful for this. So thank you so much, everyone.
Okay, so one question we have is, how do you keep your emotions in check when you are public speaking?
If I could answer that, well, is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I would say when you're public speaking, depending on the cause, it's more important to be authentic most of the time than diplomatic. But a good way to just center yourself when you're public speaking and it's getting emotional, especially in an emotionally charged setting, would be to pause, reflect, and come back to the situation. Not for too long, but usually if you just take a couple of seconds to recenter yourself, it does have a significant impact in clearing your mind.
Yeah, and if I could add, I was just going to say, I think it's what Tini said is really important. I was going to say that in some cases, it actually might be important to have a little bit of emotion in it, because that really just shows your authenticity, shows you're passionate about something. I just think that it could help, but there is a fine line.
All right, there's another question. It says, do you guys ever have stage fright?
I can
answer that.
I think sorry, Christy, did you want to go ahead?
Sure. I just wanted to share an experience I had in actually junior year, where I was supposed to give an elevator pitch in front of my entire engineering class, and for some reason or the other, I just froze, and I stood in front of my classmates for a full minute, just not saying anything, super awkward. Yes, I have stage fright. I'm sure it's a common experience, and I feel like if you want to avoid having stage fright, I guess one is to be prepared. Usually I try to have something written beforehand, and then that helps because you always have something to center yourself and reset your emotions in a sense. But yeah, also trying to find someone, a friendly face in the crowd, that also really helps to build up your emotions and confidence again.
I have another question. For a rather shy/quiet person, how would you make the first step to come out of your comfort zone?
I can take that question if anyone else. No? Okay, I'll just go. I personally am one of those people who honestly I'm one of those like quiet people who has a bit of a hard time going out of their comfort zone. But one of the things that I've learned, I think, is that if you don't take the step to go out of your comfort zone, and I think it might also be because I had a lot of people sort of hammering what I'm going to say like right now into my head at that time. Like, if you don't do this, then you're going to miss out on so much. And I think that a lot of it comes from realizing that, life stretches out far ahead. You've got a lot to go. There's a lot to experience. The world is a lot bigger than just the town you live in. And the first step to becoming a part of that global community and discovering what's out there is to step out of your own house. So I would say that you have to have the right mindset in order to step out of your comfort zone, that if you don't do this, you're going to miss out.
Another question, it sounds like it's directed to Christy, but I think anyone can contribute. How do you manage being part of Gale Force or just any club in general and other extracurriculars?
I can answer this question. Yeah, or Josh, would you like to have any input? No? Okay. Yeah, so I was part of Gale Force Robotics, and I also started my own science club in senior year. To be honest, Gale Force Robotics, like I said, it's a pretty overwhelming commitment. If you want to be committed to this competition team, you want to commit everything. But for me, in my senior year, I did have a little more time, and I had a real desire to go outside of what I'd always known throughout high school and to explore some things that I had always wanted to explore. For example, in AP classes, you don't usually get into topics very deeply. You will rush through things really quickly because you're studying to a test, but I wanted to do something that I was really interested in and bring others with me. I guess the fact that I wanted it enough was a factor that led me to be able to manage my time and arrange those meetings, to plan those things. But it's true, I did not achieve as much as I wanted to, and sometimes you just come out against the reality that this activity is something that's going to take up this amount of time in order for you to excel at it, and you just have to put that in. Gale Force is probably one of those things. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. I have another question that we got. How do you take a leading role in a group project without sounding quote unquote bossy?
Yeah, I'll take that one. I think it's for me. When I mentioned I was leading FLI, there's a lot of other people that you have to working with each individual school, and sometimes it's inevitable. Like right as a leader, you're going to have to take action sometimes, like take initiative. What I was mentioning earlier, and sometimes it's not the easiest thing in the world because people aren't always gonna agree. I think the big key with here is that there's the team building and there's a respect. There's an aspect of like we don't agree, but we still respect each other and we're still able to work on another level. So when we talk about the bossy, I think just don't be afraid of it. Obviously, you can't always have it your way. But I think just like don't let it limit you. If it's you sometimes will go too far in that there is a learning process with that. But don't be afraid because in the end, if no one takes initiative, nothing gets done. You don't want that to happen either.
Okay, does anyone have anything to add? If not, then the final question is, you know, for applying for leadership positions, there's always a lot of competition. For a club, what do you do if there's multiple people who want to become a leader on the same team at the same time?
I can answer this question. Anyone who hasn't spoken doesn't want to chip in. Yeah, so I've thought about this question. It's actually something I brushed on a little bit in my story as I was a team captain. It was a pretty unique experience in that I had 3 other people on my team who were in my same year who were also very experienced, and they're also really qualified in terms of knowledge and what they knew. And so we have this exact problem right there, that multiple people had the potential for leadership. But what I found is that in a team where the people, where the members are committed to that same goal of building the best robot, in my case, it might be having the best team project or making the most polished presentation. When they're dedicated to the same goal, usually it's possible to work together and to listen to each other, to allow each other to take responsibility for their areas of expertise, to listen to people's opportunities or to people's opinions where they're qualified and informed and skilled. When there's that kind of mutual respect, and then usually you can work things out with really civil discussion. If there are people who are particularly difficult to work with, who are maybe overpowering, it helps to address that attitude and that feeling head on, because I think usually people don't intend to purposefully discourage others or try to be bossy. In general, if you address the problem head front, it's something that can be solved.
Can I just jump in there? Is that all right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I experienced a very similar thing actually earlier this previous school year, in my section in band, and I think I was in a slightly different position with Christy when I wasn't one of the official section leaders. I was a senior in this section, mostly because I do not play the flute during concert season. I play the oboe, but I march flute. And so I was one of the non-official leaders of that section, and there was actually a huge issue because there were other seniors and other leadership members in our section that wanted to take a bigger role in handling like the affairs. And it escalated to the point where the band director had to step in, and there were many crying freshmen, which is not a good thing, like at all. And what I took from that experience is that there are many kinds of leadership. It's not just the official team captain, section leader. It's also being a leader to the kids, the freshmen, the sophomores, even the juniors, and following, like, marching band is like pretty drill related. So following orders, staying silent on the field when you're supposed to, setting a good example. And I think that if you ever find yourself in the position where you didn't end up getting a leadership position, but you still feel like you're extra qualified and that you want to take a leadership role, you should take the leadership role of setting a good example for everyone else and being like a good team member, because I feel that's a really underrated part.
Does anyone have anything to add? If not, we would like to conclude our webinar. We would like to thank all of our speakers, Oliver, Rajuda, Joshua, Tini, Christy, and Mihika. We appreciate you, and thank you to everyone that came here today. We hope you learned something and had fun. We'd just like to thank our speakers today, and we will send each speaker an e-gift card through text message.
We hope to see you again for our final webinar on July 11th at 8 p.m. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for hosting this. Great job. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for
Thank you
presenting.
everyone for coming.
Thank you. Hey.
Okay, so
Anthony,
we're gonna end the
you
meeting,
can end the meeting for all.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
and then we're gonna rejoin.
Yep.